Hello, Taras here. Welcome to another episode of Ocean State Aquatics Television. And today we are going to be covering another aquarium chemistry topic. Now, in the past, we've covered the nitrogen cycle, and in the future, we will cover the carbon cycle. And today we're going to be talking about arguably, besides those other two, one of the most important atoms when it comes to biological life in the grand cycling of the world's ecosystem and in micro ecosystems, like let's say the controlled environment of a fish tank. So today we are going to be talking about the phosphorus cycle. Now, phosphorus is incredibly potent and important element in all forms of life. It's a component in cell membranes. It dictates the components of all kinds of cellular structures. It allows plants to undergo photosynthesis. So for a variety of reasons, phosphorus is incredibly important. But not all phosphoruses are the same. Now, the broad majority of phosphorus that's in the natural environment is in the form of phosphate ions. And essentially that's important for two reasons. Firstly is biologically, so ATP is that energy currency of life. Think of ATP as just a bunch of phosphates that have like little batteries, little bead, and you snap each bead off, and that releases energy. So everything from this cichlid to these plants, the algae and the bacteria that we can't see are all using phosphates as little micro nano batteries to provide the fuel that they need for life. Now, second mostly why phosphorus is so important is because it is that catalyst for photosynthesis. It allows plants to undergo and convert everything that we need so we can produce oxygen and the like. So we'll talk about the actual phosphorus cycle in the wild and why there are two forms of phosphorus. There's a form of phosphorus that is trapped in the earth. So all phosphorus, as we recognize it, begins life in the earth, trapped in rock, coral work, bedrock, all these geological structures. And then slowly, as that is eroded over time, that phosphorus is released into seawater and then slowly distributed across the world. Unlike the carbon and the nitrogen cycles, there is no atmospheric, no gaseous phase of phosphorus. It's either trapped in the rock or it's being absorbed into a critter. So how does it get into a critter from a rock? So when you have this form of phosphorus trapped in the rock, and the majority of the world's phosphorus is trapped in a rock, that's why we mine for it to make artificial fertilizers, you need specific bacteria inside the ecosystem that release organic acids. They're acid mining bacteria. And what they do is they live in the inner substrate, just like where our denitrifying bacteria live in the anaerobic areas, and they dose organic acids into the phosphorus rock, and they release all of these phosphates, which can then be absorbed by plants, algae, and then be used to encourage life. So it's very important to have a robust colony of these bacteria in your tank if you're going to have a well-aged planted aquarium, because you want to have these bacteria which are able to occupy the roots of the plant, dissolve the phosphorus in, let's say, this media below, and then dose it and localize it right into the plant's roots. That's really important. Now, phosphorus is a limiting ingredient for plant growth, and in planted aquariums we like phosphorus if it's under control. But there's a lot of other situations where we don't want excess levels of phosphates because they can be highly destructive and destabilizing. And a good example of that is in most reef aquaria. In the reef aquaria, phosphates can easily grow nuisance pest algae. So you have to keep in mind that coral reefs, for the most part, are kind of nutrient deserts. They're adept at being able to glean nutrients when there's not much. So it's important that they have those bacteria to take rock phosphate and give it as well. But if there's excess levels of phosphate that are given through feed or excess fish waste or buildup of any other waste, then that will quickly bloom really nasty bacteria that will outcompete and make your tank look ugly and outcompete your corals. So something that's very troublesome for a lot of reef keepers is how to control phosphate levels over time, especially before their tank is super well aged and before all the phosphates from, let's say, feed are absorbed immediately. And that is where we go back to the beginning of the phosphorus cycle, where it's trapped in the earth. So even though there are bacteria that can release that phosphorus and turn it into a biologically available form, we can release metals and other geological structures to trap that phosphorus into a form that the plants and the algae can't access. So this is where products like OSA's granulated ferric oxide come into play. Granulated ferric oxide, or GFO, is a fancy word for rust. It's sterilized rust because rust, believe it or not, has a lot of bacteria in it because there are a lot of phosphate-associated bacteria, as we've gone over. But sterilized rust is a very powerful tool in the aquarium hobby because it can be released into a tank. You know, it doesn't really mess with a ton of other chemical parameters, but what it does do is it binds all of that phosphate from a biologically available form, then traps it in with the rust. So by using this and strategically dosing this inside your tank, you can control the level of phosphates that's biologically active and therefore control pest algae populations. But as we've gone over, the key to phosphorus for a healthy world, healthy planet, and a healthy fish tank is balance. Balance of phosphorus being available in the geological form, a balance of bacteria being able to release organic acids to the plants and the corals that we want, and balance as in excess geological sources to retrap that phosphorus if it gets to the excess. That's a crash course in phosphorus in the reef aquarium. It's a tremendously complex subject. I probably didn't do a great job. So if you have any corrections, comments, questions, or ideas for other videos, feel free to visit us, comment below, feed the algorithm. And if you need some GFO, I use this product in all my service tanks. I highly recommend it. Come visit us today or www.osachoice.com. See you next time.